Yeah, live to the end of the class.
There's some good traffic running too.
I think actually everyone who signed up lived to the end of the class. But you never know.
You never know.
In this class, it's worth considering, isn't it? Although with the questions that I gave you, there may have been a question at times. Come have a seat. There may be a few more people arriving. Why don't we take a few moments to sit, to arrive, and to feel grateful that we are alive. tonight. Let's do a short review. You were born. You're still alive. See how it goes for the next hour. Now, our first class, where we introduced the topic of living or dying, I think I made it clear, and it's become more clear as we go along, that the class isn't about death and dying, or about caring for the dying, or even about just facing your own death, or the death of those around you, but to how do we live with the great matter of birth and death as our reality, so that the reality of death becomes a practice. So in the first class, we not only opened to these kinds of questions, but did so by following the end of life for one of our revered teachers, and how he was a beautiful example in his own way of how he chose to move towards the end of his life in his last 3 months, using a practice primarily of gratitude. In this second class, we took the very same questions and prompts that emerged from the teachings of Yogin, Stuking, and then turned them as inquiry questions for your own practice, rather than about someone's death, someone's practice. Because what you're practicing is the great matter of life and death. And so the questions were almost the same questions, just turned to ask you about your own practice and your own commitment to practice and the fruits of practice, which is actually your life. With an emphasis on practice being in deepening capacity to appreciate life, rather than an ongoing struggle to improve your life, deepen your life, to appreciate your life. The third class turned to love, basically. Mary Oliver's line, "My work is loving the world." The Zen conundrum, if you want to understand suffering, learn to love. If you want to understand love, you have to face suffering. And so really this third class was about gratitude and grief, and how they move together. The questions, I hope, were instructive and penetrating in some way, as they have been. Tonight we will hopefully kind of draw things to a close, at least for this class, on the day celebrated as the Buddha's Enlightenment Day in most Buddhist calendars. And as you saw in the handout that I emailed to everyone, if you were to write your own obituary, today's the only day you have, so let's assume today was the day you died. It's an auspicious day. Use that date and see what you write. Some of you may have already engaged in that. I'm going to read a poem also to begin with, and it's one that is most of you know about even before I emailed it to you, because it's a commonly read poem. It's and I say this without criticism or evaluation, but it's not a poem that takes us beyond what we've known. It's Mary Oliver's "When Death Comes." It's fairly straightforward, and yet it's a straightforwardness that we still sometimes refuse. So we'll start and then we'll move further. When death comes. When death comes, like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me, and snaps the purse shut, when death comes like the measles pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity. I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering what it would be like, that cottage of darkness. And therefore I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood. And I look upon time as no more than an idea. And I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy, and as singular. And each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending as all music does towards silence. In each body a lion of courage and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say, all my life I was a bride married to amazement. I was a bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I've made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. So on the one hand, the point is real straightforward. What we all, I think, hope is that we won't just miss our life. If you go slowly and hopefully reread and savor some of these pieces, you see that they really unfold everything that we've touched on thus far. When I stepped through the door full of curiosity, wondering what it would be like, that cottage of darkness. Look upon everything as a brotherhood and sisterhood. There's an inclusion, an understanding of interdependence, that nothing is aside from this life. And I look upon time as no more than an idea, and eternity as another possibility. As we step beyond or aside or through this linear idea of a life, which comes with having a body and a mind. And this paradox of not one, not two, of universality and singularity. I think of each life as a flower, as common as a daisy and as singular. And each name a comfortable music in the mouth. Isn't that a beautiful line? Mm-hmm. Each name a comfortable, each name its own music. And as all music does, moves to silence. In each body a lion of courage. Isn't that a great line? It takes quite a bit just to live in a body, especially for a good amount of time. And something precious to the earth. That lion of courage is easy to see in old age, and yet with like your little ones, precious to the earth, you know, but we're all this. And when it's over, I want to say I was a bride married to amazement, a bridegroom taking the world into my arms. I love these two images of union with amazement, but also with an active embrace. It's not a passive, we were talking about this earlier, not just a passive sitting in amazement to the world, but actually an active embrace of the world. It takes both. Where she says, I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. I was reading it to myself as I don't want to find myself caught in the shallow waters of personality. I don't want to end up having just waded around and not plunged in. And then, going back, when it's over, I want to wonder if I've made of my love something particular and real. You know, the plunging is the particularity. The getting wet and the wrestling is the realness. So there's a lot there, I think, even in its straightforwardness, and worth visiting more, and I hope you will. When we visited her poem Messenger last time, I asked, as you contemplate the great matter of life and death, what would you claim as the work of this lifetime for you? Now, in the questions that I gave you just yesterday, I asked you, you're taking that deeper. How might the practice of standing still and learning to be astonished support this work? How does practice support what you're actually vowing in your life, meaning? Is there anyone who, in response to that question, wrote something that you might want to share? I'll ask this on each question. It's not a requirement. Certain questions will bring forward things, others won't. But I'd love to hear from you. Yes, please come up.
Oh,
so
okay.
that the people who aren't here tonight will be able to hear what you have to say.
Well,
Whatever you would like to share would be great.
okay. This was written right after I had returned from Italy, where I was very moved, surprisingly moved, by what I felt in the churches. Being a bit antagonistic towards churches. Well, thanks. I was
You were a little surprised.
I was very surprised. And so then I was answering these questions, and so this is called After Italy. And most of these questions require poems, which I really couldn't write for all of them, but this is one I wrote. It says, "Now I know. My work is to be a witness to the sacred. It is to see the sanctuary lamp that burns in all that has been created, and to allow the light to strike the tuning fork of my soul so that I may resonate with the great vibration." So that was...
That requires a bow. And there's more. You want to say?
Okay, it says,
I can see it.
how might the practice of standing still and learning to be astonished support this work? And before I read this, I should say that this question brought me over to the park near my house on a Sunday afternoon, because I love to go watch the toddlers on the playground. They astonish me, and I am amazed by them and by they are little lions.
Lions of courage.
Lions of courage, and they are careening around to their own, to whatever, but they're not listening to their parental unit. And
they're precious to this earth.
they are precious to this earth, and they're close to it, and haven't been here that long. So
That's interesting to think they haven't come far up out of
Right,
it.
they are barely upright, some of them, and so it's really.
It's just interesting to see that in my older students, barely.
So I go over there and just watch, so I'm still. And it said, "I must allow myself to be struck in order to resonate. That will happen only if I slow down, take nothing for granted, and stop distracting myself with too much doing and too much achieving. Standing still and being open with a beginner's mind is the only way that the tuning fork deep within me can be touched. It is the only way that I can be struck by the sacredness of another person, myself, a stone, a frog, or the light in the sanctuary of a sacred place. And it is the only way that those vibrations can pass through and around me to whomever and whatever is near me. That means I have to look at all things without the usual labels and usual judgment, that I have to step out of ordering and classifying. That can happen only if I take nothing for granted and am grateful for whatever is present. Amen.
Well, it's a beautiful Dharma talk on renunciation. And what it opens you to.
Mm.
Very nice, thank you. Anyone else have anything on that question, or she did pretty well. But I'm pleased. As you know, part of the practice is responding to the questions, and there's another associated practice which is expressing sometimes what you read so it could be met. Sometimes that's the way to be struck, or to be the one who strikes so that we can resonate. So please.
I just wanted to say real quickly that today is also the feast of the Immaculate Conception.
Which means, for those people who might not know.
Yeah, that's in the Christian church, that's the mystery of Mary having conceived Jesus without having sex.
No.
Yeah.
That's sin.
It was Mary herself who was conceived without original sin. It has nothing to do with Jesus.
So today is what is celebrated.
Celebrated is the fact that the Virgin Mary, allegedly, was conceived by her mother Anne without original sin that stained the souls of all others.
Oh.
Is that what it is? Geez, I was in the Catholic Church for a long time.
It's a little slippery.
It's even more distorted. It's interesting because if I take that and put it through the translator in my head, what I come up with is today is the day in which we get to celebrate that the mother of all Buddhas was and has been and will always be free within the conditioning in which the body she was born and everybody was born. How could the absolute come from the union of opposites? There's something to celebrate.
It is an auspicious day.
It is an auspicious
Yeah.
day, that's right.
Yeah.
And on this day in which we celebrate both awakening and births and freedom and completion without effort. The second question from last time had to do with Norman Fisher's quote, if you want to understand suffering, learn to love. If you want to understand love.
I was going to add also, it's not as big a holiday, but it is Hanukkah, and I like to think.
Oh good, I'm glad you
it's
were,
the third
no one
time,
said
and-
anything.
But with the mythology of it, I like to think of it as the spreading of light in the world, and it starts with the one flame the first night, and two, and now
Yeah.
it's three tonight.
The sacred flame.
Yeah, and just how it, it's like rain, it just spreads everywhere.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
What a day to die.
It is, indeed, yeah. Or not. So my questions were, how does the discipline of love, and I call it a discipline, how does the discipline of love help you live with the inevitability of human suffering? And how does the capacity to face everyday human suffering open an equal capacity to love? Those two questions probably are enough for all practice, the way they move together. That's why I love the quote, because it's sort of balancing nature, but I wanted to open it up. How does the discipline of love help with the inevitability of human suffering, and how does the capacity to face human suffering open an equal capacity to love? Was there anything that came forward that you wanted to share about those? Yes, please. You can come up
Can I
here
just
so
talk
you can.
loudly?
You can, but the people who aren't here
Okay,
miss out a little
got
bit.
it.
And you can bring your thing here if you need to.
No,
sit
no,
down.
no.
It's a nice firm chair.
Nice. I had just, the part I wanted to share was that facing human suffering and being with it opens my heart. And then with it open, there's more love is able to enter because of that. That's it.
That is it.
Listen.
What helps open your heart?
Well, in this respect, I was thinking of suffering. Suffering and being with life as it is can just, can tear the heart open, it can open it gently, it can just knock, but it has the capacity to open my heart.
And so when your heart opens in response to suffering, well, this is not a quiz. In spiritual life, what's that usually called? There's a word we usually use for it.
Compassion.
Compassion.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you were speaking, what else did you say? There was something else you said. Yeah,
At the start,
I think.
just facing it and being with suffering opens my heart and allows, and love is allowed to enter my own heart.
Love is allowed to enter your own heart.
But also with the opening up of my heart, the compassion that you just brought up, it allows me to be more compassionate, but also compassion to come in for me, for my heart, without the walls up.
Right, so that's
And
the other side.
Yeah,
So you can both offer and receive.
yeah.
So you set up an endless cycle. The capacity to step back and see this reality clearly has another name in Buddhism. Wisdom.
Mm.
Just the capacity to see that. And the deeper you see both the suffering and the more you can stay with, the more your heart opens, the more compassion. The more compassion, the more you're willing to stay really close. So you can see deeper, which is more wisdom. They begin to fuel each other.
And it hurts lots of times. It can hurt.
It
The
can.
suffering, yeah.
Yeah, that's another one of the kind of fruits of practice is that the inevitability of that kind of pain, you don't mind so much.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know, this sounds odd, it sounds masochistic in a way, but it's like once you've sat a number of retreats and you understand the inevitability of pain, but after a while you don't mind so much. You know it's going to happen, and that's kind of the way it goes, and you don't put up with it, you learn how to be with it, and in doing so you're learning something crucial about leading your own and others' lives that you never learn if you spend your entire life making sure that you avoid any kind of discomfort and always trying to be comfortable. Not because we need to be uncomfortable, of course. Thank you. And when you go, there's tissues there next to you. Would you take them to Sunny? Sunny?
Yeah.
I was just taking, she was just taking those tissues to you.
Good eye. Are you sorry?
Yeah. I'm trained. For crying people.
Skill in this area.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else around this question? Open. I thought you were going to do it on the next one.
Oh,
No, come back. No, come back. No, come back. Only because not that next one, actually, in number 4, because you already emailed me.
yeah.
You
No,
can skip.
Well, okay. Well, the only reason why I came up is because I wrote about the inevitability
Great.
of suffering.
Okay.
But I hang out here enough, I might just be channeling everyone here at this point. I wrote in my experience, the discipline of love lights the way with grace. There's no one rule for how to deal with life, but love seems to be the thing that can save a life. We all have spaces that feel unlovable or exile. I find that when love can touch these places, we begin to transform. In order for such a transformation to take place, discipline, courage, and patience help ease the inevitability of suffering, especially around those exiled places where we automatically, and even without our own consciousness knowing it, resist love.
There's a wonderful word. Should I say? Can I look at it?
Mm-hmm.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
Love seems to be the thing that can save a life. Do you want to go further?
It's hot.
I know.
It's a little hot up here.
Yeah.
I can.
The only reason is because you'd already said that this had special meaning, the number 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Unbroken, an incredibly powerful poem. And I was particularly struck by the word sanctioned into being. And how do you discover what's unbreakable in a whole? And you had said that not knowing what was to come when you got this question, which you can say.
Yeah, I was saying, I lost my dog. I didn't lose him, but he died a few days ago. And so I didn't realize that as I answered this question, I would be actually answering it from this place. And so I said, for the first part of it is how are we sanctioned into being? If I lost, my experience right now is that it leaves us or leaves me with no choice but to be myself in the midst of great losses of deep love. Nothing but ourself can hold up, and it does hold us up. It keeps us alive.
Nothing but our true selves can hold up. Yeah, that's really important. Because everything else is taken away.
And then for the second part, where it asks, have you discovered anything unbreakable in the whole through your own losses and painful experiences of heartbreak? I said yes, but not without the help of friends, sacred relationships, and love flowing in and out in both directions.
Anyone else in this series to have something they want to offer? It's a really beautiful teaching coming through.
Do you mean on the unbroken or question 2?
Any of it? Just opening it up. You can make it.
When I responded to that question about being sanctioned, number 4, I am sanctioned into being or given official approval or permission to be by loss when I embrace the reality that I have survived the loss and that I can accept the experience of loss and give it whatever meaning I choose as I live the next moment and the moment after that one. I have discovered that unbreakable and whole, that I am unbreakable and whole through my own losses, and my heart and my senses' abilities to see and hear a small touch or a taste.
Yeah, I think part of what Morgan was saying, and that you're saying also quite beautifully here, is that there's a way in which without the actual experience of the losses, all of you's not yet born, almost. All of you's not yet already fully here. There's something that's only called forward when. Yeah, that great pain and great gift. And we could also include the last question about grief and imagination. How is grief a profound act of reimagining life? And practice that emphasizes having a clear vision and mature grounding, what part does imagination play in spiritual practice? Was there anything that came forward in that one? Maybe not even an answer to the question, but it's something come forward that you'd like to share? I mean, in asking the question, what I was doing is expressing something I was learning about grief being a radical reimagination of your life. Because in deep grief, you can't imagine how you can go forward. You can't imagine how you can live without this person. You can't imagine what it would be like. And so it's required. That was my learning. That's why I asked the question, to see if maybe that struck you. Was there a resonance? There's head shaking. Was there anything else remaining from any of these questions that anyone wanted to share? We can move forward, but I wanted to make sure there's such wonderful teachings. Yeah, come on up and do more.
Well, I just wanted to say that, whoops, I'm gonna fall over.
You crawl over a peg to get
Crawl
here.
over a pig. That in working out all these questions, what came after the first, like, I don't know what the answer to this is, was a strong urge to turn it all to myself, so that all of these things about being compassionate and breaking open was the things I never do allow myself. And so that emerged in all of this process.
A lot of self-compassion.
A lot of self-compassion came out of this, and I realized that I've had some bad losses in my life, like everybody. But the losses were like the only, is there a word, reagent, the only thing that could break through the consciousness enough to eventually all of the distracting and all of the efforts not to feel pain and all of the different gambits just didn't work. And so the only sanctioned path, I think for me, what I learned was the only sanctioned path is the only one that essentially gets you away from all of that distraction and attempt to self-medicate or whatever I'm doing, into the formless field of benefaction. And that means that, what Morgan said, there is a part of us that can stand it. But that has to be found or come forward if we will allow it. And what I've learned over time is that I can stand it. And that it was very hard when my kid's dad got killed. It was fast and brutal. And I just remember thinking, I wish I could bear their grief for them. They were so swamped. And I wanted to say, I know how to do this. I could take this for you. And then it was like, no, I can't take that weight. They have to take that weight. But it's that part that somehow is there that says, I can do this, that emerges with the loss, that finally gets through all of the shells. So that's what came out of this.
Yeah, for me, what you're saying is, I'm thinking of as a back door, it's just my way of thinking of taking refuge.
Ah, yes.
because you realize you can't count on anything else.
Right.
Nothing you have counted on, nothing you've relied on, nothing you've grabbed for, no handholds, everything you've used is gone. So what are you going to rely on?
And that's where I thought, imagination, is that the right word? Because everything's gone, and you don't know what works, or what's next, and what to do. And so it's like imagination is a way that forces you or shows you the beginner's mind.
Ultimately creative and imaginative.
Right. Without any scaffolds, without any calcification, without the old paths.
It reminds me a bit of the Lojong phrase that some of you may know if you've read Norman Fisher's Training in Compassion. In post-meditation, be a child of illusion. It's like, it's a silly, childish thing, given what we know, to think you could like wake up, that you could be not overwhelmed by suffering. It's in some ways it's foolish if you were in a everyday practical thing. So be a child, have that illusion, be creative, use your imagination, and doggone it, believe in it. And say, you know what, okay, everything's been taken away, I'll still live my life. It's that deep commitment, which is, I'll take refuge in my true self that's sanctioned into being when everything is taken away. I will take refuge in the way things are actually going, Dharma. I will take refuge in my buddies. It's the only people I have to hang on to, even though they can't help me. And so it's a way of refuge.
It kind of reminded me of the story of Job, which always was distressing, until you read it kind of as the path to the whatever's back.
Nowhere else to turn.
Nowhere else to turn.
Yeah.
Nowhere else to turn. That's it. So.
Is that?
Be brief.
No, you don't have to be brief.
So I really appreciate.
Should see you coming.
I really appreciate Susan's share because it reinforced what I was thinking about this because, you know, I have grown through this class and through this practice to realize that this grief process is not dying. It's not about dying all the time. It's about, some people like use the phrase dying unto myself. And by going through this practice, I'm finding that I have relied on those old habits and in a process of transformation have relied on them almost like a crutch. And as I become open to change, I realize how much I've been leaning on them and that it does require or desire or deserve a sense of creativity and imagination to get the clear vision, you know, and it feels mature. And it feels contrasted significantly to the way it used to be, although the way it used to be might feel like it was a delusion or an illusion. And I don't know if I'm speaking in too many metaphors. My better half likes to tell me when I'm not being clear that I'm speaking in metaphors, but I really like being able to see the difference of letting things change. And I like that part
Letting
about,
things change.
Yeah, letting. I have just the other day I was talking with a friend and we were visiting about when we change, we sort of recalibrate our compass. And once it's recalibrated, then we get to believe that it's recalibrated as opposed to doubting it. And doubting comes from the old ways or not having, you know, that childlike belief that it's good and that it works, at least for me.
And there's a difference in where you're speaking between fantasy and imagination.
Yeah. And there's a richness about the reality of recognizing the difference. And it still may be another illusion, but it feels like it's more solid, it feels more clear. And
Well, whether it's solid or not, or clear or not, it's the next thing you're going to follow.
yeah.
And then you'll see how it goes. And if you're awake, you pay attention. And see if it's trustworthy or not. If it's not, correct. Because everything's interdependent, everything's changing all the time. You're not going to find one that's going to work.
Yeah. That's hard to stay there.
Yeah, there's no staying. Everything's changing.
Yeah.
So you have to stay awake.
Yeah.
And to keep responding
Mm-hmm.
to things.
Yeah. That's all for me.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
As you know, for example, quite explicitly, when I offered that the story and the teachings that came from Steve Stuckey's death, I like to use real life, like we're using real life instead of just theory or philosophy. And so I have a little piece that I like to play, which came from a recent Dharma talk of Norman's, actually, in which he is reading a letter from a Sangha member. The Sangha member gave him permission to read it and to use it, so we have that permission. This is in Salt Spring, so it's, my mind just went blank. Our lovely teacher, translator, Kaz,
Peter Levitt.
Peter, it's one of Peter's students. And we had heard from Peter, who's our great friend, that he had suffered many losses in his Sangha. This is one of them.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to turn it on for a moment. You can just hear him read the letter. And then as you listen for, just listen to the woman saying what she is saying, of course. But also hear the practice reflection as she goes in it.
Keep your heart open. You feel so much. It turns out, in actual experience, that our work on the cushion and with observing our own thoughts and words and deeds mindfully has a direct relationship to our capacity to care for others and to feel and extend love. So I want to end my talk with, I was mentioning in session, I'm on my way to Canada, on Saturday, and I'm going to see our dear friend Judith Dalen, and I was talking about her in session and this thing that happened in her family where everything was 100% fine and they were in a good life, and all of a sudden her husband had a terrible pain in his belly and rushed to the hospital. It turned out to be a massive cancerous tumor in his colon. So he went from everything is fine to probably not long to live in the span of a few hours. So I got this staggering email so I've been communicating with Judith, and I got this staggering email from her that it's so beautiful to me that I asked her if I could read it to you, and she said, sure. So here's Judith's email, at least most of it. We learned today, I think yesterday, that John's condition is palliative. He likely has weeks or maybe months to live. The goal at the hospital is to get him home as soon as reasonable. We are aiming for this day, today, Wednesday, November 4th. A hospital bed, walker, etc. is being delivered and set up at home along with nurse services twice a week. This is when we are very, very grateful for the Canadian medical system. I was talking to Fenton Johnson today, who was trying to get a simple test for his cancer, and he spent 2 full days on the phone with insurance companies and could not get the test. But in Canada, I guess you can get these things. Anyway, that was an aside. She didn't say that. John accepted his prognosis with his usual equanimity, noting that he appreciates knowing the likely course of this disease, and he is ready to die when his time comes. John has no regrets. He has had a really good life, full of wonderful adventures, professional accomplishments, good friends, and love. John and I are completely aligned with continuing on this journey, eyes wide open and hearts wide open. We have an amazing support system to help us along the way, heading toward that great mystery that none of us has yet experienced. We're able to be relatively calm about this because we've been in the middle of it for about 3 weeks now, and the reality of all this has had time to sink in. But most importantly, we both feel so deeply grounded and rooted in our Zen practice and support from Peter, who's the head of the Sangha up there, who's been just wonderful, on the phone with them every single day. And you, our local Sangha and our sister Sanghas through Everyday Zen, along with our friends and family. Meeting death in an open and intimate way is our way, and we both feel ready for this journey. We wouldn't have chosen this, but this is what life has brought us, and therefore we will meet it. Neither one of us sees this as something to fight or to fear, nor to welcome. Instead, it is what it means to be mortal. And I'm reminded of the way you once described death as the greatest gift we can give to others, making room for new life. In fact, a dear Dharma couple in the upcoming Jukai group, because I'm going up there for a Jukai ceremony, just announced a couple of weeks ago that they are 4 months pregnant. So we both see our place in the bigger picture, and for right now, we don't want to waste a minute. Everything has a preciousness and poignancy that has always been there, but now is genuinely noticed and felt. As I walk this path with John, I have discovered that heartbreak, when we stay within it with gentleness, tenderness, and kindness, rather than try to shut it off or slam the door, turns into a heart broken open. I've never felt such open, tender, vulnerable love. It is breathtakingly beautiful. Yesterday I re-listened to one of your Dharma talks about the 6 paramitas with particular emphasis on patient, gentle forbearance. It is so powerful to me to connect with the ideograph of the open heart with the sword suspended above it, which is the Chinese character for patience, tolerance. That's how I feel right now. And I feel so blessed to be in this place with my life's mate. They've been married many, many, many years. They have children, grandchildren. Our practice has also helped me to see ways in which the brightness of life can blind us to some of the beautiful depths that reside in the darkness and which are only revealed in the darkness. And knowing that the darkness is always followed by morning light makes it much easier, not the right word, to embrace the darkness. So, pretty amazing, huh?
If you want to hear that again, if you go to Everyday Zen Foundation, go to Teachings, and the recent ones, it's talk number 7 on compassion of the Paramitas. And it's about 35 minutes in. I thought there were a lot of things in it which were wonderful teachings, and kind of poetically said. But this same thing you're saying, that was why I wanted to wait, because basically almost everything that was in it were things that you'd already said.
Well, can you repeat where to find it?
Mm-hmm. Everyday Zen Foundation is the website. And there's a drop down for teachings. If you go under all teachings, they'll just be listed by topics, but there's some chronological ones, and right this moment it's on the first page. It's talk number 7 on the Paramitas, compassion, and then it's about 35 minutes or so in. If you want to get it.
Can we just wander up if we want to?
Pardon?
Can I wander up?
You can.
I've been mustering up the
I
courage.
wonder if you can wander up.
Give it my best shot.
Please do.
How are y'all? So,
Alive.
yeah. Okay, so I go to acupuncture every Tuesday, and my acupuncturist said to me the other day, and multiple times she said the same thing, which is that, you know, like she'll do like a prick, and I'll be like, wow, that's a really sensitive part on the body, and then I always ask her, what part is that connected to? Are you nodding? Does this happen to you? And she says invariably, she'll say, oh, you're pericardium. And I'm like, oh yeah, the guardian of my heart. Because that's what it is, right? So I keep getting this memo that I'm very protective of my heart, you know. And I know this. In those big book of relationships, the astrological ones, my mantra is, open your heart even if surgery is required. So, like, I'm getting this consistent message, you know. And I don't think of myself as I'm not a tight-hearted person, and I'm not a closed-hearted person, but I am. Like, when they were saying that, just then, the letter, open eyes and open heart, like, that blows me away, because that seems very courageous.
It is. And they said, neither pushing it away nor welcoming it. I thought that was a very powerful statement. Yeah, so it's not that you're closed-hearted, obviously. We are protected.
Yeah, and so it's just so interesting because, you know, like, it's like, I think about you and the psychotherapy, that I've had lots of psychotherapy. And it's been amazing. Yeah, I know, I'm like very grateful for that. Like Flint said, I was like a jungle cat before I came to him.
Feral.
A feral animal. I was, you know.
I now fully avow.
And so I feel like a totally different person, as we've discussed. But I often return to the times when I would sit with you, and you would really be a witness to, and as I know you have been witness to, I don't imagine there's some pain that you haven't seen on some form.
Yeah.
And I never felt that you were protecting your heart or closing your heart or closing your eyes or turning away, and so I've always been really astounded by that quality, not just in you, but in other people that I've met that have that quality. And I think, and I have practice discussion with you Thursday, so I'll have to think of a new topic, because this is what I was going to talk about, but it came up with you and this whole class. And so I was thinking about my family and how, like, each individual member, there's 9 of them, and each one of them is in exquisite pain in some form. And so it's
Right now.
yeah, and kind of just that's their thing, you know? So that's why it's hard for me to be with pain, because it's like I kind of went through that conditioning, and that's when I learned how to close my heart, you know?
Because that's what you were immersed in.
Yeah, and so I'm kind of in a place where it's like, oh, I'm strong enough to be present to pain, but it's like when you said masochism, like, I'm not a masochist, you know, I'm not interested in, like, throwing myself in a toxic, you know, or a flame just to see if I can bear it. I learned that from you, not to do that, you know? But I don't really, I guess I'm just trying to discern the quality of that thing where you're open eyes and open heart. Like, what does that feel like, and what, you can't accelerate that process, right? So will I get that when I'm...
Well, you know, it's interesting because as you're talking, what I hear is that because you were so immersed in so much pain, and you learned to navigate it, actually, you survived.
Yeah.
And then you took those survival skills and you've gone well beyond them. And so facing pain is really not the hardest thing for you. It's facing no pain. Love, freedom, ease.
Yeah, because that's real scary.
That's what's hard.
Yeah. That is definitely unusual to experience.
That's what
that.
is disorienting, maybe.
It is
the way
very
to say.
yeah. And also it's the same with boredom. I'm learning how to be bored, because I've never been bored, because I always have something terrible happening. Or if it's not happening, I'll make it happen.
And what's interesting is that even the word bored has a bit of a negative connotation.
Right, like a judgment.
Yeah. You might
Yeah,
learn
with
just simply to be at ease.
Right. How boring.
Well, once again, you would rather be bored because the pain of boredom is better
It's
than being at
something,
ease.
right, it's like there's pain there.
Yeah, then you know that. But this being at ease, fully supported, fully seen, fully loved, that's your biggest challenge.
And and also offering that to people that are, like, a dying person, for example. I can imagine
You mean
shrinking
like all of
from.
us?
Right. That's a good point. But I can imagine shrinking from that, right? Like to a certain extent, like when you know they're dwindling, like you called it the dwindles.
That's right.
So then there's a part of me that wants to close as they exit. I'm like, I'll exit too.
Right.
And so I think it's impressive
To
to
stay with.
Yeah, that's the thing is I don't quite know how to exercise that and without
Well, you're-
getting hurt, which maybe
There's no
they're
way.
two sides of the same. Yeah, that's the whole thing.
You have to be willing
Mhm.
to feel the pain of inevitable loss,
Mhm.
because that's the price you pay for love.
For big love.
Big love, yeah.
Yeah.
Not, I don't mean neurotic suffering or
Right. Or like
dramatic.
half-ass love.
No, I mean, if you're gonna really love somebody, all relationships are terminal.
That's why children
Period.
is terrifying. Yeah. Being a
So
parent.
you are gonna lose.
Yeah. Thanks, Flint. Thanks for that. Is the good
That's my
news.
job.
I know.
Mhm.
So if there's a practice to be with and still be open, what might I do other than?
Seriously,
I
I mean,
know.
that's our whole practice, that's it. And you've been doing that.
Yeah.
And you have been working with your conditioning, you've also been sitting,
Mhm.
and those two things with everything else has made a big difference in your life. You're
Mhm.
doing it.
Mhm. Yeah. So I'm courageous.
Yes, you are. And you meet whatever you meet along the way, just like everyone else does in their own ways, and it's unique, just like each flower.
Mhm.
But the thing that I value immensely about you, among other things, but something essential is you keep coming.
Mhm.
You don't stop.
Mhm. Because I see.
You know what it's like to not do it,
Mhm.
and you're no longer willing to do that.
Oh, not even close.
Because as you watch your family, you see what it's like to not.
Mhm. That's why I think.
And
their
without a
idea-
judgment, just with a heart rate.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to stop the pattern.
Yes.
I
Absolutely.
want to keep that carrying, especially if you have a family or,
Mhm.
just in your own marriage, in your own life. You don't want to continue the pattern.
No, and we talked about that the other day.
Which is
about-
vow, basically. How do I offer myself in the world towards more freedom instead of more?
But you don't look for heartbreak, obviously, but
You don't have to.
you don't have to.
You look for love,
Right.
and you'll find
And then
heartbreak.
you'll find it, yeah.
That's right,
they're
it's a
hand
country
in
music
hand.
song. Right?
Mhm. That's what the poignancy piece is,
Yes.
the bittersweetness.
Yeah. Bittersweetness, there you go. Here, it's a bittersweetness. Give me close.
No bleeding hearts.
It's true. You're a tough one. That's not the issue. So in the one that I sent you today, I asked that question, what would you die for? What would you give your life for? Because that's what you're doing. That's what you're demonstrating. What is your vow? Look at your life. Those are the really hard questions that we come down to at the end. And so when I suggested that you might want to write your obituary, it wasn't an empty, like, oh, let's play like we're dying kind of thing. It's really a way of saying, if we were doing a service for you right now, what would you want people to say? What would you hope would be the impact? Not in some fantasy way, but in really some heartfelt way. And that gives you direction. And then you can write your vow. They go together. They're so intimately connected. It's another reason why I included Tori Zinje's Bodhisattva vow as one of the things that I emailed you, I believe.
I didn't get this email.
Huh?
I didn't get this email. Oh, you can just. Yeah, let me see if I can find it.
Do you have enough tissue? You need more.
I sewed this one.
Yeah. I did include this one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If we go through it just for a moment, we're not going to spend a lot of time. here is someone who has written their vow. And it's a vow written according to Bodhisattva vow, Tori's and Jay's Bodhisattva vow. You may not all have it, that's okay, it doesn't really matter. It was with the inclusion. And he starts out, in my mind anyway, speaking about what it's been like to practice in the ways that Sunny was just talking about over time. And he says, when I, a student of the way, look at the real form of the universe, all is the never-failing manifestation of the mysterious truth of the awakened life. When I am a student and I look out, having practiced, this field of benefaction is what I see. It's the never-failing manifestation of the mysterious truth of the awakened life. It doesn't say, when I, a student of the way, look at the real form of the universe, the mystery is solved for me. It's the never-failing manifestation of the mysterious truth. In any event, in any moment, in any place, none can be other than the marvelous revelation of its glorious light. What else could it be? This kind of realization made our ancestors and teachers extend tender care. You have this realization, what else can you do but be of service? Extend tender care with respectful hearts, even to such beings as birds and beasts. In fact, this realization teaches us that our daily food, drink, clothes, and protections of life are the warm flesh and blood, the merciful incarnation of the awakened one. Every single thing is nothing but truth manifesting. So then there's the turn around gratitude. So who could be ungrateful? And the turn about kindness, or respectful, or not respectful. And then the funny language, even to senseless things, not to speak of humans. Which I think of like a lower than senseless things, not to speak of humans. Even though they may be a fool, be warm and compassionate toward them. Then there's the hard ground of, this is a lot of the opening to absolute bodhicitta, absolute love, absolute compassion. But then it starts turning towards relative. And then the hard teachings on relative compassion, actually loving people. If by chance they should turn against us, become sworn enemies and persecute us, be with us on the Christmas holidays, we should sincerely bow down with humble language and the reverent understanding that they are the merciful messengers of the awakened one. The merciful messengers of the awakened one, isn't that great?
Yes.
You can say that as you look at your stockings, and the merciful messengers of the awakened one. Who use devices to emancipate us from blind tendencies, produced and accumulated upon ourselves by our own egoistic delusion and attachment through countless cycles of space and time. This is a peculiar way, idiosyncratic way of saying, if you're a student of the way, you can use everything as your teacher. And that's your choice. You can make it a problem and something terrible. You can be a victim, and you can do all kinds of things, and that's ordinary life. And if that's what you choose, fine. Or you can choose to practice, which means you take exactly the same things and you turn them into teachings. How am I going to use this to wake up? How can I see this is triggering in me, so I can free myself from that, so I can be of service in the world differently? Then, if that's the case, then on each moment's flash of our thought, because now your thoughts and your heart are different, as you've been describing, as Sunny was just saying. On each moment's flash of our thought, there will grow a lotus flower. And on each lotus flower will be revealed perfection, unceasingly manifest as our life, just as it is, right here and right now. It doesn't say everything will be fixed. There'll be no pain. You'll be free of suffering. It says on each moment's flash of our thought, there will grow a lotus. On each moment's flash of our thought, there's a possibility for awakening. No matter what that thought is. and it would be revealed as perfection, unceasingly manifest as our life just as it is right here and right now. And if that's the case, you have one more thing that's essential. We have to offer it and be of service in the world. May we extend this mind to all beings, so that we and the world together may attain maturity in the wisdom of the awakened life. If there's anything that the world needs right now are those three senses. May we extend this mind to all beings, so that we and the world together may attain maturity in the wisdom of the awakened life. Mature people get scared. Mature people get mad. Mature people are sad and grieve. Mature people are confused. They just don't use all of that to hurt each other. Mature people are not free of all of that. They are free within all of that. They just don't use it to hurt each other or themselves. So what else do you have to say for yourselves before we finish? Did any of you begin the writing, obituary writing or the vow writing? And how is it to do that? Yeah.
It was strange, but it was a review.
A review of your life?
Uh-huh. And it was hard to go from third person to not go first, to not say my, but to say
Yeah,
she.
the discipline is to say
She.
It makes a real difference to do it that way.
And you think, yeah.
Then you come back with your vow and bring it back.
So yeah, and the balance in the first person.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite an experience.
Yeah.
And it was interesting for me to email it to my sister today. And
That's a wonderful practice.
her review it, and I hope I will to read hers too.
Uh-huh.
Because of course, there's history.
Mhm.
And so, it was challenging and positive.
It'd be interesting, I know it's a lot of work, but write your sister's and have her write yours and then share
Yeah.
and see how they're
Some of the
similar and
similarities.
different.
The genetic
Yeah.
tendencies.
I wrote mine and would write it and then come back to it half an hour later and say, no, that's not important, write something else, no, that's not even important. And what I was left with was, number one, I need to do a whole lot more writing, because what I want for the obituary would be what I would want for the service, which would be participatory. I wouldn't be there, of course, but
You never know.
you never know.
Well, right.
And to have the things that, rather than talking about these are the things I've done, to have things there like some of the things that have given me the most quiet pleasure, like the smell between a dog's toes. Or the taste when you break a hemlock branch and you taste that sap.
Uh-huh.
Or a mullet's shell on the beach in Cape Cod that's still got that gritty and it smells kind of like old tide water and backed up rot, but it's just so beautiful, you know? So if there was a way, or red-winged blackbirds in a marsh, you know, that sound they make at dawn. So some of it will be things that we can bring to share. And some of it I'm just gonna have to get to work and write because I can't bring them there.
Mhm.
So that is going to be the obituary. It's not going to be, this is what she was and this is what she did, but let's experience the things that, you know, even the smell of mange on a dog. Missy knows this is crazy, but I love mange. Because, I do, because you can take an animal that's so suffering and miserable, and through very simple care, they blossom And there's something about that yeasty bread smell that they start with, that then transforms itself into this beautiful, great smelling, healthy, vibrant animal, and it's just the contrast.
So I have a practice for you. All of you can use this. It's a very interesting one to do exchange with a friend or a partner. You make columns for the 5 ordinary senses, and then you write down all these very particular, peculiar things that you love, that really bring you alive.
Or make me sad.
They bring you alive.
Yes,
Whatever, not happy.
right.
They bring you alive.
Okay.
Yeah. And we can all name a million little idiosyncratic, strange little things, that are like that. And all the things you like to smell, things you like to see, things you like to hear, things you like to taste and touch. And then what's interesting is, if you share that with someone that you're near, they might go, I didn't know. And then things show up,
Yeah. And there'll be some that we can pass around, and there'll be some that I have to get working on to
That's
write about it, because I
You gotta
can't
convince
bring.
some mangy dogs.
Well, no, but I can't bring a marsh at dawn with the red-winged blackbirds,
But you can.
But
bring
sometimes
some
you-
image.
but I can bring,
But sometimes you can actually go ahead and use the words.
right,
And one of the main things I'm hearing, if I back up to your very first statement, is that now have experienced the power of writing practice. Because you write and you realize, oh, that only took me thus far. And then you go back and you go deeper, and you go back and you go deeper. And that's really important, to find the power of writing practice and how it can, and we have Peg to thank for that too, because she's really emphasized that so much. It's become really central here.
so that was my sort of interesting thing.
I think it dovetails on hers because the end of mine is just a few little.
Please. You want to come up here and do it so we can see you?
Sensory, in a way too, since you just said that. So, my life. Sunrise on a Haleakala volcano in Maui. Witnessing 2 Hawaiian women dance and sing a healing ritual in a cove in Maui. Very, very private moment. Sunset at Esalen. Pines of New Mexico and the Colorado mountains, and I do mean the aroma. A wintry day in Granada with a dear friend. Twinkling lights of Holland as seen from a train at Christmas. New York City at Christmas with my daughter. Seeing Defiance of Gravity leap by Mikhail Brezhnev in live performance. Experiencing live performances of Yo-Yo Ma, Joni Mitchell, Sergio Mendes, Joan Baez, Mercedes Sosa, Alvin Ailey, Mercy Cunningham, and the Conspirari Choir.
Amen.
Lucky me.
Yeah, we all have our sort of entrees into gratitude
Very,
and how we're shaped by those things.
definitely. Thank you.
Well, I was writing mine today. Do you have a second? Okay. I didn't know if you were winding down or not. I didn't want to. I'll just say what happened to me when I was trying to write mine.
This way others get to share.
Yeah. So I was writing it. It was so depressing because I was kind of filling in the blanks that you left for us.
Yeah, get you started.
And that was good. I needed that. I was writing it in a rush, and I wasn't in a very open space. And then I got to the part where we're supposed to say, fill in the blank was a very blank, 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 like in that first paragraph. And the first thing that came to me was this, what I imagined people would say about me. And I didn't like that. I was like, unloving, exuberant, and I was like, I am so much more than that. And I don't want it to be just reduced into a few adjectives, and it really.
It's interesting you started fighting with your own ideas.
Oh, I was. And then I was like, oh, well, maybe that's part of my problem. So I went ahead and I wrote like a mock one. I was like, Clayton loved to shit in the cornfield. Or whatever.
Crazy thing.
Like funny things that are kind of true. I mean, I don't know. I don't know where that example I just gave came from. But like it was really fun to play with all the things that people don't know about me that don't fit what would be acceptable, especially in my parents' point of view.
Right.
And then to just play around with that. And the sad part came, I think, from realizing like how reducing it would be if they just said exuberant and fun-loving, and how that's so, to me, very inaccurate. Oh, and joyful. I just wanted to like, and then it made me think of that Rilke poem about how we come of age as masks, and I think that I walked away with that, like thinking about, like that's my vow, is to drop the mask more.
Right, now you're into it, yep. That's my hope.
Yeah.
Is that by doing this, you will realize what is really important. And not in any kind of radical way, or rebellious or pushing against, because that's just flipping.
True.
How can you come forward as actually your truest, most authentic self?
Yeah.
Because that's what sort of practice is for.
Yeah. And it'd be totally fine if in that little speech they said exuberant and joyful and all that, because it actually,
It is part of you.
it is, and it doesn't really matter what anyone actually ends up saying to me that much. What matters is that sad feeling I had thinking, like, ooh, I hope I don't miss out letting people know who I really am.
Right. And the sort of therapist part of me that would say, I hope I don't end up only being and expressing those parts that my parents wanted me to show.
Yes.
That actually find out who I am.
The last one.
Who my parents wanted me to be.
Which I know I'm beyond that, but it even goes like wow, am I deepening my friendships and my relationships in a way that are authentic enough to where they would know?
The best of me shows, and they are, I can offer myself in the best way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that came up as my like, that's where, I don't want to say I have work to do, but that's just where I need to keep showing up.
Well, that's the practice path.
Yeah.
To become fully who we are, so we can really appreciate our life, the actual life that we're living.
Yeah. It's kind of sad sometimes when you think about all the missed opportunities to let yourself be seen, really.
And that's part of what Mary Oliver's saying, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And why the Han says, don't waste time, don't waste his life.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'm gonna keep working on it, but it is really fun to write like a really kind of meaty obituary. Thank you.
Let it be real. And we're at the end of our time. The last thing that I gave you was one of the blessings from John O'Donohue, which I used a small one today in Inquiry. But this one is called For Absence. And I include it not as some sort of negative or down thing, but that inevitably we live with absence, we live with losses, we live with space. And so this is a very beautiful, I think, reflection on those spaces and those absences that we inevitably live with. May you know that absence is alive. May you know that absence is alive with hidden presence, that nothing is ever lost or forgotten. May the absences in your life grow full of eternal echo. May the absences in your life grow. Absence can grow, full of eternal echo. May you sense around you the secret elsewhere, where the presences that have left you dwell. May you be generous in your embrace of loss. May the sore well of grief turn into a seamless flow of presence. That's the practice line for this whole course. May the sore well of grief turn into a seamless flow of presence. May your compassion reach out to the ones we never hear from. May you have the courage to speak for the excluded ones, even in ourselves. May you become the gracious and passionate subject of your own life. Self-compassion. May you not disrespect your mystery through brittle words or false belonging. May you be embraced by God, in whom dawn and twilight are one. May your longing inhabit your dreams with the great belonging. May your longing inhabit your dreams with the great belonging. Thank you for your presence, for your participation, and for your hard work that gave you such difficult koans to work with. Let them continue to unfold.